You're seeing a live shot right now. The president is there in Arizona. He is shaking hands with his supporters, and we see some military officials there. We're staying on the president's arrival in Arizona. He will be having a rally tonight with his backers. President Trump called for unity and healing in his speech last night after getting basically after a week of getting blasted for his comments on Charlottesville. House Speaker Paul Ryan saying the president, quote, messed up with moral equivocation and moral ambiguity at a time when the country needed extreme moral clarity. Here's the president last night. Let's take a listen.
A wound inflicted upon a single member of our community is a wound inflicted upon us all. When one part of America hurts, we all hurt. And when one citizen suffers an injustice, we all suffer together. When we open our hearts to patriotism, there is no room for prejudice, no place for bigotry, and no tolerance for hate.
Joining me now, liberal commentator Wendy Osefo and Republican strategist Ford O'Connell. Ford, well, that was scripted teleprompter Trump. He made that comment last night. Tonight, he could go off script and ad-lib it at the rallies. Is he going to stay on a message of unity tonight during his Phoenix rally?
I bet we will hear a call for unity. Obviously, it will not be the majority of what he's going to talk about tonight, which is his agenda with respect to immigration or enforcement in the economy. But let me say something else. Basically, President Trump screwed up in Charlottesville. There's no question about it, and he wants to make amends. But there is going to be no one primetime speech or one rally that's going to allow him to put it in the rearview mirror. He's going to have to do this incrementally and talk about unity where possible on the campaign trail and at the White House.
All right, Wendy, his calls for unity, critics are blasting President Trump for not mentioning Charlottesville by name last night. Is that fair?
It's not fair, but I do understand the pain that the country is going through, and they want to hear Charlottesville. And in some respects, it's getting kind of odd how he continues to relitigate the whole Charlottesville incident. And I think Ford is spot on here. You know, this is something that was really a drop of the ball, so to speak. And it's not going to be one statement, one comment, or one event that is going to wipe this away. And I hope he knows that. He knows that he has to move forward, even with some sort of policy or legislation that shows that these are beyond words and what he's saying really comes from the heart, and he cares about unity for the American people.
You know, Ford, there's going to be a lot of protests. We're monitoring that as well. We clocked in, we're tracking about a half a dozen protests, expecting thousands to descend on the convention center there in Phoenix, according to our local reporter. What are your thoughts about the protests that could happen outside the convention center?
Well, hopefully it goes off without a hitch and everyone's civil, but we also do know that what's driving the protesters is Trump derangement syndrome. There is nothing that this man can say or do that will pacify them. Hopefully Trump will make that call for unity, but at the same time, what President Trump has to figure out and what he's wrestling with day in and day out is how does he get his agenda through Congress while still being a president for all of America, particularly in times of crisis and great strife. That is really all President Trump should be focused on from now till the end of his term.
Yeah, he's in his wheelhouse when it comes to border security here, Wendy. There's been a lot of talk that the president should also be barnstorming the country about his economic growth agenda, including tax cuts, Wendy. That's what President Obama did with Obamacare. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think that we need to hear what is this president's legislative agenda, and we need to know what exactly is the direction in which we're going through. And I just want to touch upon something you said. You know, he's in his wheelhouse. He's going to talk about immigration. But the minute he starts saying build that wall, if that is the type of rhetoric he goes with, this is all going to fall to pieces here. You can't talk about unity one night and then move forward with saying build that wall. So he has to be very, very, very careful here. He's walking a tightrope. So it's whether, you know, are you going to say that you're about unity, or are you speaking to, you know, your base, so to speak? And
you know, Ford, basically President Trump has backed off pardoning Sheriff Joe Arpaio. What are your thoughts there?
I think that's absolutely the right move. The situation with Sheriff Arpaio is very complicated, and if he is actually going to pardon the sheriff, he needs to vet this fully and come up with a backstory so everyone understands the situation. A lot of people don't know who Sheriff Arpaio is. All they know is he's a lightning rod. I do think what happened to him is a miscarriage of justice, but it needs to be reviewed very, very carefully.
Meaning he didn't appear before a jury. A judge ruled on Sheriff Joe Arpaio. I hear what you're saying. Now, President Trump making a point last night to spotlight the military as a role model for unity in the country. Let's take a listen.
The men and women of our military operate as one team. They transcend every line of race, ethnicity, creed, and color to serve together. They're all part of the same family. It's called the American family.
And that military has had a lot to deal with. These past 2 weeks, we've seen escalating tensions with North Korea, also problems with Venezuela collapsing, the socialist government there basically in total collapse. Race relations and lawmakers from both sides of the aisle. There's a lot of problems here. Wendy, how important is that message right now?
Our country needs unity. We need to be one. We need to come together. We need to stop looking at race. We need to stop even looking at partisanship. We really need to heal. So I think the message is really important, but it's really important for the president to know that this is a top-down approach. So he cannot use those words and then tomorrow use Twitter to blast a U.S. senator or to blast a judge. We have to move forward and be progressive, and it has to be consistent. And that is the key word. It's go ahead, Forsey.
To your point, though, the flag and patriotism have been known to heal a lot of wounds in America over time. What I will say, the difference now and other times in our past is we're not in the Cold War, and unfortunately we don't have a patriotic moment where we can all come together and put aside our differences, and that's something that I think we actually need. I do love the messaging. The problem is I don't think the nation understands what's going on abroad.
Ford and Wendy, good to see you. Thank you so much for coming on. Really appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
The U.S. putting its foot down with new sanctions